Mahoney and Clark County. It's Rob Anderson with Reform Clark County. And this week we're going to take a look at a couple of spicy meetings that took place. One up in Battleground in the city council, and the other one that maybe you didn't hear much about, but at the charter review, there was some fireworks and some spice, and it was pretty exciting. But before we jump in, hit the like button, share, please tell people about the show, and also support it if you can. Go to givesendgo.com, punch in Reform Clark County, and please be generous and support the efforts. So last week, we saw, the first week of June, we saw a very, very spicy meeting in Battleground. Battleground City Council was considering two proclamations that, in normal times would be considered kind of no-brainer, not a big deal. But we don't live in normal times. We live in a time when up is down, down is up, women are men, men are women, and calling out terrorist organizations is un-American, I guess. And so we saw how Democrats rallied Antifa and Indivisible and other supporters to stand against really a Republican majority city council that was putting forth these two proclamations. And the first proclamation was supporting federal law enforcement, in particular ICE, which shouldn't be really controversial. The language of it was, I think, pretty tame, and the importance of supporting federal law enforcement. These are officers that are enforcing laws that were passed by our Congress, signed by a president. I mean, went through the process, and we have Democrats, in particular, radicals that want to disrupt it, who believe that, proclaiming support for U.S. ICE is somehow a bad thing. And so one of the aspects that was put forth in the proclamation, it said, proclaim that support for U.S. immigration and customs enforcement. It's a reaffirmation of the rule of law, national security, and the principle that laws passed by democratic society must be enforced. So it's just, it makes a lot of sense. The other proclamation was against Antifa, in which says, do hereby proclaim the importance of upholding public safety, the rule of law, the peaceful civic participation within the community, and the violence, the intimidation, the property destruction associated with unlawful activity in various jurisdictions constitute serious threats to community safety and civil order. And it's a reaffirmation of strong support for law enforcement, public safety agencies, and lawful prevention, investigation, and prosecution of criminal conduct, in particular that is done by Antifa, but really all. And this was outrageous to Democrats. This was outrageous to, those on the left. They just couldn't do it. And in particular, when the whereas statements from the mayor, it says, whereas the mayor of Battleground recognized the significance of this federal action and the broader national concern regarding Antifa-associated activity reported in multiple jurisdictions, and whereas such unlawful, regardless of affiliation or ideology, undermines public safety. And so, but this was just too much for some. And, right on cue, in a proclamation denouncing Antifa showed up and, disrupted, yelling out swear words and raising the middle finger and disrupting and really trying to intimidate the city councilors, because that's really what Antifa does. They are intimidators. They use tactics of bullying, of shaming, of name calling, of, violence, whatever they have to do. And right on cue, Antifa began to, try these tactics to disrupt the proceedings. But, many are still promoting the narrative that Antifa doesn't exist. But yet there it was in the room. In fact, and Antifa members holding a Antifa flag. You can't make this stuff up.
The domestic terror organization and affirming the importance of public safety.
Point of privilege, Mayor.
Fuck you.
Mayor, I motion for recess for 2 minutes.
Second. Motion passed. Chief, can you please ask that person to leave? Thank you.
I'll stand right here, please. I'll stand right here.
Mr. Mayor, there was no vote on that motion, sir.
All right, we have a motion and a second to recess for 2 minutes. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Recess for 2 minutes. You guys want to go to the back? Go ahead.
Hold on. There's no need to get physical. Why don't we try to de-escalate the situation?
I'm a citizen and I'm allowed to fucking be here. I want to say, you, you're fucking fascist piece of shit. Fascist. All of you are fascist pieces of shit. You need to all go to hell, motherfuckers. All of you. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you. Shame on you, motherfuckers.
Still pushing me.
So what we've seen is this unholy alliance between Clark County Democrats, really goes beyond Clark County, but right here, Clark County Democrats, Indivisible, and Antifa. And because the Democrat chair put out a call out to Democrats to rally around against these two radical proclamations, which weren't radical at all. They were just really calling out basic public safety aspects and calling out what pretty much everyone knows, which is Antifa is a terrorist organization, and it's been deemed so by our U.S. federal government. But yet that was too much for the Democrats. Tim Probst said, no, we must rally the troops. And so he did, Indivisible did, and Antifa did. And this is an important thing that we can't miss, that there is this unholy alliance between Democrats, Indivisible, and Antifa. They are working together. So maybe some of you think, I'm thinking about, I kind of like this No Kings, Indivisible thing. If you want to join in with Antifa radicals and terrorists, then be my guest. Go ahead. But that is who the Democrats of Clark County have gotten into bed with. They are one and the same, Antifa, Indivisible, and the Clark County Democrats. And maybe even the League of Women Voters, which seems to have thrown their lot into that as well. I'll maybe tackle that a little bit later. But oddly, before the proclamations happened, Councilor Troy McCoy, along with another city councilor, attempted to kill these two proclamations. They, in support of Antifa, and to throw a bone to their anti-ICE radical followers. Troy McCoy seconded a motion to try to table these two proclamations. Now, they didn't just look to table it to like a later time. They wanted to forever kill it. It would be tabled and never to be brought back up on the battleground city council ever again. And it failed. It failed. He decided to stand with Antifa, with Indivisible, with his Democrat allies, wanting to forever block these proclamations.
Well, we have a motion and a second on the floor to strike the two proclamations. Which proclamations?
ICE and Antifa.
ICE and the Antifa proclamation from this meeting and all future meetings.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay.
Nay.
Just waiting for Mr. Councilmember Bowman to weigh in.
Nay.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but the clerk would like a show of hands, please. For ayes.
Yet a few days later, Troy McCoy took to Facebook and posted his disgust for what happened at the Battleground City Council. Now, you might be thinking, oh, good, he probably denounced, the Antifa and the fact that these people interrupted a democratic process and meeting and, people being able to be heard and their intimidating tactics and all that kind of stuff. No. That's not what he was calling out. That's not what he was disgusted with. He was disgusted with the democracy of it. He was disgusted with that city council members want to proclaim their support for federal law enforcement, who want to reiterate the national view that Antifa is a terrorist organization because Antifa has been more active in North County. But that bothered Troy McCoy. Not the Antifa part, not disrupting, not the fact that they had to get arrested and profanity and and there was children there and no, that didn't bother Troy McCoy. It was basically that how dare I'm about public safety, but yet he voted against it. He tried to stop it. And he's talking out both sides of his mouth. He's hoping that you won't notice that on one hand, he's saying, I'm for public safety, and then he's voting no. In fact, you can kind of see, how sheepish he was when he voted.
But the clerk would like a show of hands, please, for ayes.
So good for Battleground City Council. Good for those counselors. You have to stand up to the bully, and the bully is Antifa. The bully is, the squad that wants you to bow the knee to them. Good for them, because we need more of that. We need to show the strength, and all of the citizens that showed up and said, no, we support these two proclamations. Good job, Battleground. Good job. So Monday night was super exciting in Battleground City Council. But there was another spicy meeting, and it happened Wednesday night with the Charter Review Commission. And maybe this kind of slipped by a lot of your radars. It didn't get the national coverage that the Battleground City Council meeting got. But it was significant. In fact, I would say maybe more significant than the Battleground meeting. So Wednesday, Commissioner Ann Donnelly, who made a surprising announcement regarding the Public Safety Prioritization Charter Amendment that she had co-sponsored, she made an announcement that, it was on route to be on the November ballot of this year, but she made the announcement that it will be deferred to 2027, in part because of the efforts of one Greg Kimsey, our auditor. Wait, our auditor? You mean the guy that is in charge of making sure our elections are fair and honest? Yes, Greg Kimsey. She called him out in the middle of her announcement regarding the Public Safety Prioritization Charter Amendment because of his unusual efforts to use his office, to use his reputation, use whatever he could really to undermine the efforts of the Charter Commission.
Next, I want to raise a related factor in this deferral: the undue influence of an elected official on our process. Whether around the table you individually support or oppose this amendment, we must all unite to defend the independence of our processes from the other branches of county government. I refer to our elected auditor, who has taken an unusually active role in opposing this amendment, holding multiple meetings with other elected officials and with individual charter review commissioners over the past weeks, presenting an opposition report that I have not seen. So meanwhile, I and the amendment committee have been on the outside of this process waiting. And all of this may demonstrate the need next year to revise and reintroduce Amendment 2609, which prohibits county government from interfering with initiatives and charter amendments. But the bottom line is this Charter Review Commission is nothing if it is not independent. Yet procedurally, we committee chairs must go to the executive branch for cost and legal review. Those officials owe it to us to act without bias. Other elected officials and staff have maintained that standard, even while going on record, either supporting or opposing the amendment in its current version. Question for all of us: where is the ethical line for an elected official who opposes the amendment? At what point does individual opposition become interference, putting the hand on the scale? I believe, unfortunately, that the auditor has come close to or even has crossed those lines, and that should concern not only us, but the public.
Now, this isn't the first time that the commissioners have been undermined by Auditor Kimsey. In fact, he injected himself right from the beginning. Before, a lot of people don't know this, but before the commissioners were sworn in, Auditor Kimsey sent out a letter to all of the elected charter review commissioners with a misleading information that they had to be sworn in before January 1st. Which was not true. Now, they could be, the law changed, and they could be sworn in. That was the difference. But the way he stated it, he misled them to think that they had to be sworn in before January 1st, which was not true. It was misleading, and it was an attempt to really disrupt the elected charter review commissioners and to kind of like set the stage that he calls the shots, that he's in control of this. Then Auditor Kimsey sent in Mitchell Kelly and some other staff from the auditor's office to kind of bombard, take over an agenda of one of the meetings by giving public comment one after the other, kind of forcing themselves on the agenda, even though they weren't on the agenda, in which they positioned themselves in order that the Charter Review Commission would feel pressured to use the auditor's office to conduct the financial assessments for charter amendments, which would come into play later because financial assessments are easily weaponized to either help promote or kill charter amendments, which is exactly a part of what happened. Even though it's not dead, it's going to be moving to next year. But clearly, Greg Kimsey has, in my opinion, crossed the line, and as was brought out by Commissioner Ann Donnelly, has really conducted himself in an unseemly manner in order to undermine duly elected charter review commissioners. There's no way around it. But it turns out that the auditor isn't the only executive branch member who's desperately trying to disrupt the Charter Review Commission, which, by the way, are duly elected people, elected throughout all of Clark County, 15 charter commissioners. And many of them, mostly the Republican ones, but many of them ran on open platforms like public safety prioritization, supermajority tax protections, transparency in government. But yet the auditor is working full time, on your taxpayer dime, by the way, to try to undermine their efforts. Now, he's in charge of the, mechanisms of democracy, the elections department, but yet he's going out and trying to undermine those results in a way, since they openly ran on these issues. But the auditor is not alone, because Commissioner Dorothy Gasquet, who campaigned on Ethics Commission reforms, and trust me, they're desperately needed. Now, I just have to say I wasn't in support of her charter amendment specifically. I think it was too heavy-handed and was too much of a bureaucratic solutions. It would create more bureaucracy than was needed. But I do appreciate the fact that she's trying to reform, and she was going full on with independence, and she was completely chop blocked Wednesday night. So she was scheduled, it was on the agenda that she was going to give the presentation for the charter review or for her amendment for Ethics Commission, and the PA's office, with the full blessing, I'm sure, of Tony Golick and all the other senior staff members, decided to read a letter that was uninvited. It was off agenda, and it was a scathing review of her charter amendment. But it wasn't necessarily about her charter amendment. It was about her presentation, which has never happened. In fact, another Democrat commissioner at the end of the time said, "You've never done this before. This is unprecedented." But they decided to pull back the curtain, the PA's office, and show their muscle, that they're the ones who are really in control.
For the record, Katie Jolma, DPA with Civil Prosecuting Attorney's Office. I feel it is my duty to address the contents of the presentation materials of proposed Amendment 2615 before it is presented to the public. I have authority from my Chief Deputy PA to do so, and this statement has been concurred and reviewed by besides myself, two other civil PAs. First, even though Commissioner Gascade made substantive changes to this proposed amendment, she never resubmitted her proposed amendment to the Civil PA's office following my initial review, and has not contacted or reached out to me in any way following her initial email to me, which I replied to. It should be noted that all other commissioners have worked directly with the reviewing attorney in a cooperative and respectful way to correct and edit all other proposed amendments. Commissioner Gasquet is choosing to operate outside of these standards. Second, her presentation is littered with half-truths, misrepresentations, unfounded assumptions, and outright falsities. To begin, page 2 of the presentation states, quote, "This amendment is grounded in standards identified by leading local government experts," end quote. However, Commissioner Gasquet rejected the recommendations provided to her by me as a representative of the Clark County Civil Prosecuting Attorney's Office, which is the county's government expert on ethics.
So this was a blatant and obvious flex by the PA's office, wanted to put the commissioners, in particular Dorothy Gasquet, in her place, so to speak, and say they're in control of this process. And it was amazing that in this meeting we saw not only Republicans and Donnelly, but we also saw Democrats who cried foul of saying, wait a minute, the efforts of the Charter Review Commission are being undermined by the executive branch. And there's no denying it. And Commissioner Dorothy Gasquet was not going to go down quiet.
Unlike the prosecuting attorney, I was elected to reform the ethics. And I don't understand why they're interfering. It's a conflict of interest to protect the system that you currently operate. You haven't handled any other amendment this way. I did respond to your email. I asked for you to cite case law. I asked for help from you to determine the language. You're missing a presentation that I gave in which I spoke about the government ethics experts that I'm quoting, that I demonstrated the language comes from Jacksonville, Florida charter, that this language is in use in this country. And just in general, I think you have a conflict of interest and you should recuse yourself from this. This is just unacceptable to interfere with our process, to interfere with the fact that I was elected to reform the ethics program.
So why this is so important is because, myself and a lot of other Republicans have been kind of yelling this overreach by the executive branch for a while, by the PA's office in particular. But this is the same meeting. You see a Republican pretty respected Republican and a pretty respected Democrat, pretty much saying the same thing, which is the executive branch is overreaching. There's a conflict of interest, and they are out to undermine and sabotage the work of the Charter Review Commission. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt that is what's happening between the auditors' efforts and the PAA's office, which, by the way, those are two key offices because one controls the financial assessments, the other controls the legal assessments, and it's very clear that they feel like they're in control. It doesn't matter what the voters voted for. It doesn't matter who they voted for and what they stood for. What matters is that the auditor in the PA's office gets what they want. And that has been revealed. That curtain was pulled back at the same meeting. A bipartisan experience unfolded on Wednesday night. And this is why I say this is probably more significant than the battleground city council meeting, because this kind of corruption, it's been around the whole time. And it's just rarely do you see a meeting like this where the curtain is pulled back and this corruption is on full display. But that is what happened Wednesday night. So this is an epic battle brewing, and maybe not as flashy as what we saw in Battleground, City Council, and cameras and national attention, but it is significant because this is the executive branch that has really been staging this power coup, so to speak, for over a decade now, ever since the charter was put into place, which was really a flex by the executive branch in order to put the legislative branch, the people's branch, the commissioners in their place, in check, and put the executives in charge. And now we see a situation where the auditor and the PA's office seem to have some kind of God complex where, it's been exposed. And it hasn't been exposed by just like one side of the aisle. It's been exposed by a bipartisan situation in the same meeting. It's come out into the light. So because Kimsey and the PA's office, it's very clear that they are trying to, and they are undermining the efforts of the Charter Review Commission. The issue is really what's going to happen next now that this has been exposed, now that the curtain has been pulled back. Will they feverishly work to try to put Dorothy, in line, or Ann Donnelly in line, and try to keep them quiet? Because this was very unusual flex by the PA's office. They sent the letter to the commissioners. They didn't have to read this letter and make it public, but they did. They put it out in the open, and they wanted everyone to know they're in charge. Not the voters, not for who they voted for and the issues that they voted for, but they're in charge. And if they don't like something, they'll put their thumb on it quietly, or if they have to, loudly, like what happened on Wednesday, and they'll kill it. And they're not ashamed, and they're not afraid to say it. I think that this was, again, a very revealing and productive meeting for that reason. Sometimes before change can happen, you have to see that change is needed. And this is a very important meeting. Maybe some will forget about June 3rd, Charter Review Commission 2026, but I won't forget it. And I think some others should mark it down, because this is the meeting where the corruption was exposed. And it's a problem that has to be dealt with. We have to fix this and rebalance the branches of government in Clark County to make it work for the people. Because right now it doesn't work for the people. It works for certain executive branch members. And not all, but just certain ones. And they're in charge, in particular, like the PA's office. The PA's office, a lot of people don't understand, but they provide legal services for pretty much the whole, not only just the county government, but they provide it for all the school districts. And I mean, they are the most powerful, office because of that aspect, that they can control the leash of electeds and of, the departments all of the departments because of the legal aspects of it. And unfortunately, the PA ran unopposed, and the people really have no choice besides now having a new Tony Golick handpicked prosecuting attorney. So I doubt that things will change anytime soon unless the people demand change. And make no mistake, Kimsey and the prosecuting attorney's office, they aren't just undermining the Charter Review Commission. They're undermining you. They're undermining your votes. They're undermining what you wanted, what you voted for when you read the voters pamphlet and said, yeah, sounds like someone that I want to, these are the kind of things I want on charter review. That's what they're undermining, because they don't want certain things. They don't want, property tax protections for taxpayers. They don't want, more transparency. They don't want visibility and how they, maybe ordinances are passed and how that's going to impact housing costs. They don't want these kind of things. Democrats, which, yes, is the PA's office, is Democrat, and most of the attorneys there are Democrat-friendly or leaning or hard left. They don't want those kind of things, and they don't care if these charter review commissioners are elected or not. They made that real clear on Wednesday. Auditor Kimsey doesn't care about duly elected charter commissioners. He wants what he wants or doesn't want. And it's very clear. It was on full display. So a lot was exposed this week. Democrats like Troy McCoy coming to the aid of Antifa, standing with Antifa rather than with law enforcement. The PA's office and the auditor disrupting and undermining the Charter Review Commission, and in a charge not brought just by a Republican, but a Republican and a Democrat commissioner all at the same meeting. But will others start listening? Will others then say it's time for change? It's time for accountability. It's time for this kind of corruption, this cronyism of just a few people calling the shots and undermining duly elected people whenever they want. This is a real problem that now has our attention. So thanks for watching the show, and don't forget to hit the like button, the share, help get the word out, because it's important that you stay engaged, that you know what's going on, not just, in the battleground situation, but in the charter review, the corruption that just showed itself. It's important. So need your help. If you can support the show, go to givesendgo.com at Reform Clark County. So givesendgo.com. Reform Clark County, boom, and you can make a donation. And remember, you, with God's help, are the catalyst to reform. See you next week.